I'm not changing my lifestyle. I'm 4 or 5 women every day of my life.
From Ric Flair, who slept with over 10,000 women, to Bret Hart, who wrote about sleeping with hundreds in his own autobiography, to Edge, who was caught sleeping with his co-worker's girlfriend while still married himself. Here are the WWE legends who reportedly hooked up with the most women and exactly how they did it. Ric Flair. Let's start with the man who basically turned infidelity into a championship title defense.
I just was wild with women.
Ric Flair, the Nature Boy, 16-time world champion, and according to his own mouth, a man who claims to have been with over 10,000 women. He later said he regretted making the claim, not because it wasn't true, but because his grandchildren would eventually see it. That detail alone tells you everything. Flair wasn't exaggerating for the cameras.
Remember, girls, remember, when Ric Flair's in town, showtime!
He was just doing the math out loud. His marriage record reads like a career highlight reel of its own. 5 wives across 5 decades. First came Leslie Goodman from 1971 to 1983, with whom he had 2 children. Then Elizabeth Harrell, who stayed through the wildest years from 1983 to 2006, and gave him Charlotte Flair and the late Reed Flair. Then Tiffany Vandemark for 3 years, followed by Jackie Beams from 2009 to 2014, a marriage marked by domestic turmoil and assault allegations. His 5th and final marriage was to Wendy Barlow in 2018, a former WCW valet who stood by him through serious health scares. The affairs were so constant and so numerous that they became background noise to his career. Multiple divorces were directly attributed to his infidelity. Flair expressed regret in his later years, but by then, the scoreboard had already been set. Now, if Ric Flair is the undisputed king of this list in terms of raw claimed numbers, the man coming up next is the one who actually put it all in writing, in painful, detailed, honest-to-God print. Bret Hart. Most wrestlers let the rumors swirl and say nothing, but Bret Hart wrote a book. In his autobiography Hitman, the 5-time WWF champion didn't just hint at infidelity, he described it in detail, estimating hundreds of affairs during his years on the road, with Japan being a particularly frequent destination for what he called the temptations of the road. He framed it as a product of wrestling culture, something almost every man on the road was doing, but he didn't hide behind that excuse either. He expressed genuine guilt. He acknowledged the damage, and then he kept going anyway because that's what the road did to people. Hart was married 3 times. His first marriage to Julie Smadu lasted from 1982 to 2002, all while the affairs continued in the background. His second wife, Cinzia Rota, was an Italian woman he met during one of those very affairs, a relationship that became a marriage from 2004 to 2007. His third and current marriage to Stephanie Washington began in 2010, and by all accounts represents the stable chapter his personal life never had before. If Bret was the man who wrote it all down, HBK was the man who lived it loudest, right in front of everyone, and somehow still managed to walk away clean. Shawn Michaels. The Heartbreak Kid wasn't just a character, it was a lifestyle. Shawn Michaels in the 1990s was arguably the most gifted in-ring performer alive, and also one of the most notorious backstage wildcards in the history of the business. The Click years were a blur of political maneuvering, partying, and rumored hookups with dozens of women across the circuit. His first marriage to Teresa Wood lasted from 1988 to 1994. His second, to Rebecca Kurtzy, a former WCW Nitro girl, began in 1999 and has lasted to this day, producing 2 children. The transformation between those 2 marriages was significant. In 1996, Michaels was linked to Tammy Sytch, known in WWE as Sunny, in a relationship that caused waves backstage and put both their careers under scrutiny.
The worst I can think of is the thing with Shawn. Screwing with somebody's wife or very close girlfriend, or even if she wants to, that's not the litmus test.
Rumors of dozens of additional hookups during his prime years circulated for decades, none of them officially confirmed, all of them widely believed. And then there's the accusation Bret Hart made about Michaels and Vince McMahon, a claim denied by those in the know, but one that has never fully disappeared from the conversation. What changed everything for Michaels was religion. Not everyone on this list had a religious awakening to slow them down. Some just kept going, match after match, city after city, with a roster of co-workers that reads like a who's who of WWE divas. CM Punk, Here's what makes CM Punk's story so fascinating. This was a man who built his entire brand on discipline, straight edge, no alcohol, no drugs, clean living. And yet, when it came to romantic relationships inside the WWE bubble, Punk was anything but restrained. Before settling down with AJ Lee in 2013, they married in 2014, Punk worked his way through a significant portion of the women's roster. Confirmed relationships included Mickie James in 2003, Maria Kanellis from 2005. To 2007, Kelly Kelly in 2007, Beth Phoenix in 2008, and Lita from 2009 into the early 2010s. Rumors linked him to more than 20 total partners, including names from the independent circuit like Tracy Brooks and Daphne before he ever set foot in a WWE ring. The pattern of dating co-workers created genuine backstage tension on multiple occasions, with some of those breakups playing out in an environment where everyone had to show up to work the next day and pretend everything was fine. There was also documented friction between Punk and AJ Lee during their marriage, stories of backstage fallouts that went well beyond normal couple disagreements. If CM Punk's story is about contradictions, the next man's story is about a reputation so big it practically became its own character on television. Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash, Big Daddy Cool, Diesel, Big Sexy, was a man whose entire persona was built on the idea that he was irresistible. And according to a long list of backstage reports, that wasn't entirely fiction. Nash has been married to Tamara Nash since 1988, a relationship that has survived multiple separations and at least one confirmed affair. That affair was with WCW Nitro girl Cheyenne, a relationship that ran from 1996 to 2002, 6 years, while Nash was still technically married.
About my relationship with Kevin. And it started off as a friendship, and we were both in relationships. He was in a marriage, and they separated legally, and then I ended up breaking off my relationship.
He admitted to the infidelity, and the couple reportedly reconciled, with Nash crediting Tamara's strength during his later battles with addiction. Rumored flings with Stacy Keibler and Tori Wilson circulated through wrestling media for years, never confirmed but rarely denied either. Nash sat at the center of all of it. His Big Sexy nickname wasn't just a t-shirt slogan. It was reportedly a summary of how he moved through life during those years. The fact that his marriage survived everything is almost as remarkable as the marriage itself. Nash at least kept most of his chaos contained to a single long-term affair. The man coming up next reportedly spread his across an entire locker room and had a co-worker go public about it. Batista. Batista had 3 marriages and a reputation backstage that, according to former colleague The Great Khali, extended to a significant portion of the WWE Divas roster. Batista married Glenda Bautista from 1990 to 1998, with whom he had 2 daughters. His second marriage to Angie Bautista ran from 1998 to 2006, and that one ended directly because of his affair with Melina Perez, a fling that became an open secret in the locker room around 2006 and 2007. His third marriage to Sarah Jade lasted from 2015 to 2019. In between those relationships, names like Kelly Kelly and Rosa Mendez were linked to him in various reports and backstage accounts. Khali's claim that Batista slept with many divas was made publicly and generated significant buzz in wrestling circles, though the specific names beyond Melina and Kelly Kelly remain in the rumor category. What's notable about Batista's story is the sheer timeline of it. This wasn't a single era of excess. It spanned decades, 3 marriages, and 2 entirely separate careers, one in wrestling and one in Hollywood. Batista's chaos was spread across decades. The next man's most infamous moment happened in a single, concentrated explosion that took down multiple careers at once. Edge. Adam Copeland built a Hall of Fame career on being the rated R superstar, but the most genuinely rated R chapter of his life had nothing to do with a scripted storyline. It happened in real life in 2005 when it came out that Edge had been having an affair with Lita, while Lita was in a long-term relationship with Matt Hardy, and while Edge himself was married to Lisa Ortiz. The fallout was nuclear. Matt Hardy found out, posted about it online, and the story spread through wrestling forums and mainstream media faster than any WWE angle could have been written.
And the message said, hey, it's me, and this is killing me. I can't go without talking to you. If you're gonna stay with Matt and not be with me, then I'm lost, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I love you.
Hardy was briefly released from WWE. Lita received some of the most intense crowd heat of the entire decade. Edge somehow came out of it with a heel persona that became one of the greatest in company history. WWE turned the real-life scandal into a storyline, and the crowd's genuine hatred for Edge and Lita made it appointment television. The Lita chapter defined his off-screen legacy, a moment so dramatic it almost overshadowed a career full of championship moments. Edge's story burned fast and bright in public. The next man's story was quieter, but the numbers, when you dig into them, tell a story all their own. Jake Roberts. Jake the Snake. Roberts is one of the most psychologically complex figures in the history of professional wrestling, and his personal life reflects every bit of that complexity. Roberts was married at least 4 times, but the number that tells the real story is 8, as in 8 children from multiple women, spread across a lifetime of relationships that addiction repeatedly shattered.
When you're able to be satisfied in life with a drug or a drink and nothing else. That's all I cared about. How much coke did I have? Because when I ran out of dope, everything else was gone.
The road years were brutal for Roberts in every sense. The substance abuse that eventually consumed him also fueled a lifestyle of reckless personal decisions that left a long trail of damaged relationships. His sobriety journey, championed publicly by DDP Yoga founder Diamond Dallas Page, led to genuine life changes. Remarkably, Roberts eventually reconciled with Cheryl Haygood, his second wife, and remarried her in 2022, a detail that somehow makes the whole story feel less like tragedy and more like a hard-won second chance. The 8 children from various relationships remain the most concrete evidence of just how many women passed through Robert's life during those chaotic years. Jake's story is one of survival. The next man's story is one of pure, unfiltered excess, the kind that could only exist in the 1980s wrestling world. Hulk Hogan. In the 1980s, Hulk Hogan was the most famous professional wrestler on the planet, possibly the most famous athlete in America. And with that level of fame came a personal life that was consistently out of control, even when it looked perfect on television. Hogan married Linda Claridge in 1983, and they built the image of the all-American wrestling family for over 2 decades. 2 kids, the reality TV show, the whole package. But that marriage ended in 2009 with an affair with a woman named Christiane Plant, cited as a contributing factor. Jennifer McDaniel became his second wife from 2010 to 2021. His third marriage, to Sky Daily beginning in 2023, lasted until his death. But it was the 2012 sex tape scandal involving Heather Clem, the wife of radio personality Bubba the Love Sponge, that defined his post-wrestling infidelity narrative. The tape was released without his consent, leading to a lawsuit against Gawker that Hogan ultimately won. The 80s flings and Hollywood-era rumors add additional layers to the picture, though specifics remain largely in the rumor category. Hogan's excess was cinematic. The next man built his in the most visible spotlight in the business, and still somehow kept parts of his personal life hidden for years. The Undertaker. Mark Calloway spent over 3 decades building one of the most airtight, impenetrable characters in wrestling history. The Undertaker never broke kayfabe, never did talk shows, never smiled for the cameras, and yet his personal life turned out to be surprisingly eventful. He married Jody Lynn in 1989, a union that produced 1 son and lasted until 1999. His second marriage was to Sarah Frank in 2000. He had her name tattooed on his throat, which felt permanent, and they had 2 daughters together before divorcing in 2007. His current wife is Michelle McCool, a former WWE Divas champion he married in 2010, with whom he has 1 daughter. The transition from Sarah to Michelle generated genuine backstage tension, with rumors surfacing that the relationship with McCool had begun while he was still married to Sarah, something both parties denied. McCool reportedly faced significant heat from certain members of the roster over the situation. For a man whose entire professional existence was built on mystery and darkness, the fact that his personal life involved the same kind of behind-closed-doors drama as everyone else on this list almost feels like a storyline reveal. The dead man had a very human personal life underneath the hat and the coat. The Undertaker's story is about what was hidden. The next man's story is about what everyone could see, a possessive, jealous dynamic played out in front of millions of fans every single week. Randy Savage. The Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth are one of professional wrestling's great love stories and also one of its great cautionary tales. Randy Savage married Elizabeth Hewlett, known to the world as Miss Elizabeth, in 1984. Their real-life relationship had been woven into WWE storylines for years, making their on-screen reunion at WrestleMania 7 after a scripted breakup one of the most genuinely emotional moments in company history. But behind the scenes, Savage's jealousy and possessiveness were real and relentless. He reportedly monitored who Elizabeth spoke to, controlled her interactions with other wrestlers, and created an environment of isolation. They divorced in 1992, and Elizabeth's life after Savage ended in tragedy. Savage's 80s Playboy reputation suggested multiple girlfriends during the height of his career, though specifics are sparse compared to others on this list. His second marriage was to Lynn Payne in 2010, which lasted until his death in 2011 from an atherosclerosis-related heart attack while driving. Savage's story was about possession and control. The next man's romantic disasters played out just as visibly, but with a level of creative storytelling that turned every personal setback into a new character. Bray Wyatt. Wyndham Rotunda, the creative genius behind Bray Wyatt, The Fiend, and a dozen other personas, lived a personal life that in 2017 became very public and very messy. Wyatt had married Samantha Rotunda in 2012, and they had 2 daughters together. Then word got out that he had been having an affair with WWE ring announcer JoJo Offerman. Samantha filed for divorce that same year, citing the affair, in a filing that was documented extensively as it unfolded in real time. Wyatt and JoJo went on to have 2 children together and were engaged at the time of Wyatt's death in 2023, at only 36 years old, from myocarditis, a heart condition he had been battling following a severe COVID-19 infection. The tragedy of Wyatt's death at such a young age cast a shadow over everything that preceded it. Whatever the circumstances of how his relationship with JoJo began, the partnership clearly became something genuine and lasting. He died engaged to her, with 4 children between 2 families, a complicated legacy wrapped inside a genuinely devastating loss for wrestling. Wyatt's story ended in tragedy. The next man's story unfolded like a slow-motion train wreck that somehow kept getting worse with every new headline. Steve Austin. Stone Cold. Steve Austin is the Attitude Era, the beer, the stunners, the middle fingers. He was the avatar of late 90s rebellion. But off-screen, the personal life was significantly darker than the highlight reels suggest. Austin has been married 4 times. Catherine Burris from 1990 to 1992. Jeannie Clark, better known as the British wrestler Lady Blossom, from 1992 to 1999, with 2 daughters. Then Deborah Marshall from 2000 to 2003, a marriage that ended with domestic violence charges filed by Deborah in 2002.
When I hung up the phone, I started crying like a baby because she used to sound exactly like I do. For better for worse, without the 4-letter words, she had my same accent.
Austin was charged, pleaded no contest, and received a fine and community service. He has addressed the situation in interviews, admitting that the marriage was volatile. His 4th and current marriage to Kristen Ferris began in 2009 and has been by all accounts stable. Austin admitted in various interviews to road affairs during his active career, framing them as part of the wrestling road culture without going into specifics. The domestic violence chapter is the unavoidable part of his story. It sits there in the middle of an otherwise celebrated legacy and forces a more complicated reading of who Steve Austin was when the cameras weren't on him. Austin's story is complicated by the darkness in it. The next man's story is complicated by sheer volume. The number of people connected to him reads like an extended roster entry. John Cena. John Cena spent the better part of 2 decades as WWE's ultimate company man, the face of the franchise, the guy who never turned heel, the man whose merchandise kept the lights on. And his personal life, despite his best efforts to keep it professional, became one of the most talked about in WWE history. He married Elizabeth Huberdeau in 2009 and divorced in 2012. His long-term relationship with Nikki Bella, which ran from 2012 to 2018 and included a high-profile WrestleMania proposal, dominated celebrity tabloid coverage for years before ending with Cena ultimately deciding he didn't want children, a choice Nikki has spoken about openly. He married Shea Shariatsadeh in 2020. Rumored hookups with WWE talent over the years include Mickie James, Kelly Kelly, Victoria, AJ Lee, and Barbie Blank. None of them officially confirmed, all of them circulated extensively in wrestling media. The pattern of rumors around Cena is notable precisely because of who he presented himself to be. The ultimate ultimate role model, the guy doing Make-A-Wish visits and living by a code. The gap between that image and the whisper network of locker room stories created a cognitive dissonance that wrestling fans have been chewing on for years. Cena's story is about the gap between image and reality. The Next Man's story is about a reputation that was built slowly, over decades, in the shadows of the Memphis circuit and the WWE announce table. Randy Orton. Randy Orton is a third-generation wrestler, grandson of Bob Orton Sr., son of Cowboy Bob Orton, and he arrived in WWE with both a genetic gift for the business and a reputation for reckless personal behavior that took years to outrun. His early career was marked by stories of groupie hookups and locker room misconduct that resulted in multiple suspensions and disciplinary actions from WWE. Rumored romantic connections to WWE talent over the years include Stacy Keibler, Candice Michelle, Layla, Kelly, and JoJo, none officially confirmed, all widely circulated. He married Samantha Spino in 2007, and they had one daughter before divorcing in 2013. His current marriage to Kim Kessler, which began in 2015, produced another daughter and appears to represent the settled chapter his early career gave no indication was coming. The 14-time world champion's personal transformation mirrors his in-ring evolution, from a young, undisciplined prospect who nearly burned his career down repeatedly, to a methodical veteran who knows exactly what he's doing and why. The early years of groupie stories and locker room rumors are still out there. They just exist at a very long distance from who Orton appears to be now. Orton's story is about growing up. The Next Man's story is about a man who never really had to, because the spotlight followed him everywhere and the rules simply never seemed to apply. The Rock. Dwayne Johnson is arguably the most famous human being to come out of professional wrestling, and his personal life has been examined at a level of scrutiny that most people on this list never experienced. He married his college sweetheart Dani Garcia in 1997, and they had one daughter together before divorcing in 2008, a separation that was remarkably civil, with Garcia going on to become one of Johnson's primary business partners and producers. His second marriage to Lauren Hashin in 2019 produced two more daughters and has remained stable. The rumored flings during his transition from wrestling to Hollywood, names like Annabella Costa, Irina Shayk, and Kirsten Storms were linked to him in various entertainment reports, exist almost entirely in the rumor category, with nothing approaching confirmation. What's most notable about The Rock's entry on this list is how carefully managed his personal image has been throughout. In a business where discretion is rare and gossip is currency, Johnson has maintained a degree of privacy that most of his contemporaries never achieved. The rumors exist, they circulate, but they bounce off a PR machine that is, by any measure, the most effective in the history of professional wrestling turned entertainment. The Rock managed his image with surgical precision. The next man on this list managed his personal life with considerably less control, and the results were significantly more chaotic. Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho has been married to Jessica Lockhart since 2000, over 2 decades, and they have 3 children together. By the standards of this list, that looks almost conservative. But Jericho's backstage reputation, particularly during his early WWE years, generated enough gossip to earn him a place here. Rumored affairs with Kelly while married and with Barbie Blank around 2009 to 2010 circulated extensively in wrestling media circles. A Reddit thread described Jericho as notorious for certain backstage behavior, though the specifics were vague. There were also whispers about an open marriage arrangement at various points, though Jericho denied the most specific allegations in interviews. The rock star persona, fronting Fozzy while simultaneously being a WWE main eventer, kept him in environments where the opportunities for extracurricular behavior were constant. Jericho addressed the infidelity rumors publicly and denied most of them. Whether the denials are complete or selective is something only the people involved know. What's certain is that for a man with a long-running, stable marriage, his name generates a remarkable amount of romantic speculation among people who followed his career closely. Jericho's reputation floats somewhere between confirmed and rumored. The Next Man's story has enough confirmed marriages and children to tell its own story without needing rumors at all. Rocky Johnson. Rocky Johnson, the Soulman, one half of the first black WWF Tag Team Champions, lived a full and complicated personal life that his far more famous son, Dwayne, has occasionally referenced publicly. Johnson married 3 times. Una Sparks from 1962 to 1978, producing 2 children, Ata Maivia from 1978 to 2003, who gave birth to Dwayne Johnson, and Dana Martin from 2004 until Rocky's death in 2020. The affairs during his active wrestling years were, according to Dwayne himself, a known reality, a product of the road life that defined his father's generation of wrestlers. Dwayne has spoken with a measured combination of understanding and sadness about his father's personal life, acknowledging the complications without excusing them. Rocky Johnson wrestled across territories for decades, in an era when there was no social media, no camera phones, and very little accountability for what happened on the road. The stories from those years are largely oral history at this point, passed down through locker rooms rather than documented in print. But the marriages, the children, and Dwayne's own public comments paint a consistent picture of a man who, like so many on this list, treated the road as a separate world with separate rules. Rocky Johnson's story lives in the oral history of wrestling. The next man's story is well documented, frequently updated, and has generated its own dedicated corner of the internet. Dolph Ziggler. If there's a modern-era equivalent to the Shawn Michaels ladies' man reputation, it's probably Dolph Ziggler. The multi-time Intercontinental Champion built a personal brand around being the show-off, and that apparently extended well beyond the ring. His confirmed and publicly known relationships read like a who's who of pop culture. Nikki Bella from 2008 to 2010, Kelly overlapping that same period, comedian Amy Schumer briefly in 2011, WWE's Dana Brooke from 2015 to 2016, and internet personality Trisha Paytas in 2016. The relationships were often short-lived, frequently overlapped in the timeline, and generated significant media coverage given the celebrity profiles involved. Amy Schumer in particular brought Ziggler into mainstream entertainment coverage in a way that most wrestlers never experience. The pattern across all of these relationships was consistent, high-profile, fast-burning, and quickly replaced. Whatever Dolph Ziggler was looking for in his personal life during his active WWE years, none of these relationships appear to have been it. His status as of his 2024 WWE departure is considerably quieter on the personal front, which may itself be the most revealing detail of all. Ziggler's love life was loud and public. The next man's was quieter on the surface, but the weight of what happened during those road years eventually made it into print permanently. Dustin Rhodes. Dustin Rhodes created one of the most subversive and bizarre characters in WWE history with Goldust, a gender-fluid, Hollywood-obsessed, psychologically unsettling figure that pushed every boundary the mid-90s product had. The man behind the gold face paint had his own share of personal turbulence. Rhodes was married 3 times, first to Terry Runnels from 1993 to 1999. They also worked together on screen, with Terry playing Marlena, Goldust's valet, then briefly to Milena Martelloni from 2002 to 2003, and currently to Terrell Roche from 2012 to present. The Terry Runnels marriage was the most publicly scrutinized, with their on-screen partnership creating a dynamic that, by multiple accounts, made the off-screen breakdown considerably more complicated. Dustin's battles with addiction affected all of his relationships and contributed to the marriage failures in ways he has been candid about in interviews. The rumored additional relationships beyond his marriages are sparsely documented. His story on this list is more about the confirmed record than the rumor mill. 3 marriages across 3 decades, each one reflecting a different chapter of a career and a personal life that was constantly in motion. Scott Hall. We close with Razor Ramon, the bad guy, one of the most charismatic figures in the history of professional wrestling, and a man whose personal life was almost entirely defined by the addictions that shadowed every relationship he ever had. Scott Hall married Dana Lee Bergio twice, 1990 to 1998, then again 1999 to 2001, a remarkable detail that speaks to the kind of turbulent bond that addiction creates and destroys and recreates. They had 2 children together. His third marriage to Jessica Hart in 2006 lasted barely a year. The Razor Ramon era and the NWO years in WCW were by multiple accounts among the wildest in wrestling history, and Hall was at the center of all of it. The party culture, the access, the complete absence of guardrails. His ex-wife Dana Lee Bergio eventually wrote an open letter, documented by the Post and Courier, that described the damage of living inside that storm. Hall died in March 2022, following complications from surgery. His legacy in wrestling is enormous. The character he created, the matches he delivered, the moments he produced. His personal life was a casualty of the same excess that made him so compelling to watch. That tension between the art and the destruction is the Scott Hall story. Thanks for watching. If you found this video shocking and unbelievable, be sure to check out other similar and amazing videos on the screen. See you in the next video.